Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Jamie, and this is my podcast where I take an adult gummy and then I just talk to somebody that I maybe don't even know, or just like whatever. And I just find out cool things about them. And so this is my friend Donna, and I've only ever known Donna on Facebook, so that counts to me if I only know them socially. And it's Cowan, right? I feel like I should ask people how to say their name before the podcast starts.
Probably not a bad idea, but yes, you are correct. It is Cowan. Most people fumble and bumble with that one a little bit. So you're already doing well.
Yeah. So tell us what you do, because like I don't even know.
Well,
So
I do.
I mean, I do actually. You're an author, right?
Yeah, I am a children's author. I write middle grade chapter books, but I also do so much more than that. It's like that's where I started, and it just kind of exploded into all these other jobs I had no idea that I was going to do. So I had been an editor. I
Yeah.
had been an editor before I actually published anything, and then I became a children's author.
Really?
And then I started helping people with like publishing their books because once the book gets written and if you're writing a children's book you get the illustration and everybody's like, okay, now what's next? And so
Right. And like do you people like self-publish with you, or like how or now, or do they get like traditional, because that's a difference, right? Self-publishing and traditional publishing are different things.
right, so now I will actually help them do either one, their preference. The majority
Mhm.
of the people that I work with, they want to self-publish or hybrid publish, which is kind of where you're paying somebody to help you kind of go through the process and get your books out there. Not always the best way to do that, but it's one of the options. But I also help authors who just want me to help them get their book done and into shape and write all the query letters and stuff like that to look for either a literary agent or a publishing company. Uh,
So I have a literary agent, and I like had to do query lettering in
mhm,
order to get the agent, and that is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
right. Well,
And I don't know why. Like I can write 50,000
mhm.
words, but you ask me to write two paragraphs about what my story's about, suddenly I can't do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's very
Teach us, oh
complicated
wise
and
one.
complex. And what I tell people is, you have to be very careful to make sure you understand the submission requirements for each agent and or publishing company because they're different and they do that on purpose. It's sort of a test to see if you're paying attention or if you're mass querying.
So you think the querying process, like, and what that is where you have to you send agents like, this is what my book's
Mhm.
about, and then they're like, they decide if they want to actually read your book or not, right?
Right. Generally,
And you think that it's you, yeah,
yeah, generally it's unsolicited. Sometimes, there are different events, like a lot of times at conferences and stuff for writers, they will have like literary agents that'll do like a speed round thing where they'll meet with authors for like about 10 or 15 minutes and they'll kind of say at the end of that, and they're like, you know what, go ahead and send me something. Or just not really my cup of tea sort of thing. And so they kind of put you ahead of the line rather than just mass querying, where you're just sending an unsolicited manuscript. So, I mean, there's a lot of pieces and projects that go into that. It's like, you have to not only understand your book, you have to understand the marketing aspects of it. You have to do a full proposal. You have to do the
right.
query
So
letter
so I wait,
and bio and all the other things and the comparison
yeah.
titles that most people don't even think about and honestly don't have a lot of idea of how to do that or where to get the information.
So are you pro agent or against agent in the literary world? Do you think you need an agent in order to publish and be successful?
Um, I'm going to just say that you can be successful either way. What I tell people is that's the wrong question. The question is how much
Okay.
control and how much work do you want to do? If you're not concerned about control and you don't want to do
Right.
any of the work, then publishing company, literary agent, that's the avenue for you. If you want 100% control and you're willing to do all the work, then self publishing is the avenue for you. Now, there are varying
Right.
degrees in between. There are small presses that don't require an agent. There are hybrid publishers. There's different things out there to kind of fit everybody's comfort level, I would say.
What do you say though? Like, what is the quickest path to success as a writer? What would you say you have to do in order to become a writer?
Well, honestly, you have to write a good story.
But okay, so you don't think it's about the agent and the query letters and all of that stuff. You still think it's about the book.
Right. Well,
Like even though that's so because you can get wrapped up in all that other stuff. And it's happened to me before. Like I'm in conferences and I'm writing books and I'm doing all this stuff and like what about the story? Like you forget the story and suddenly I'm working on the same chapter and can people like is it a distraction is what I'm saying.
Right. No.
What do you
No,
think?
I think that you have to at the base of it tell a good story because you yes, an editor can help you if the story's not great, they can make it better. But the premise of the story and the meat and bones of the story has to be there. Whether you're
But
given a
what
deal by a big publishing house or you do it independently as a self-published author, the bottom line is you're selling to a market. The market's only going to buy a book that is well received. Now, there are some pitfalls on both sides of the coin. Obviously, you get a bigger market if you're going with a traditional publisher or literary agent, which they're trying to get you a traditional publisher, recognized
right.
publisher. But again, you're also competing with every other author and every other book they're publishing. And the thing of it is they base a lot of times your advance that you would get, your royalty advance, off of what they expect your book to sell in a lifetime. So, as a rule of
And so
thumb, you can.
is this like what you do full time? Like are you just like all in this like all the time?
Well,
Is
I
this just like
actually
what you do? You just all about
I
all
do
this?
this and I do many other things. Like I said, I write my own books. I also work as an editor. I do this. I also am a writing coach for people who are just lost in the process of writing. In fact, I host.
How do you feel about Chat GPT with the
Well,
writing as a writing coach right
I'm
now?
not 100% against it, but I'm not 100% for it. I think if
Right.
you're using Chat
Mhm.
GPT or any of the AI programs for, to help you as a tool, in other words, let's say you're writing marketing copy or you're trying to write a query letter or, an author bio or something like that, I think this is where a tool can come in and help you. If you're writing a book,
Yeah.
no.
Well, right. Yeah, exactly. Well, you're not wrong because what if you were just like, I need this to be so much more compelling as a query letter, and surely ChatGPT can like write it like. But does this change the game? Because, like you said before, writing a good query letter was so important, and now,
Mm,
like, well, if ChatGPT can just say, "Hey, you're an X," like, I wonder if they're seeing a lot of like the same query over and over and over
right.
again.
And
I wonder what's going on with
yeah,
that.
and
Yeah,
that's the dilemma too on the other side because ChatGPT and all of the AI, they're not artificial intelligence yet. They're assisted intelligence right now because they've been based on other
exactly.
information that it has obtained from other resources. So there is the
Is
problem.
your book in the
Well,
mix?
there is the problem with it, repeating the same information, but again, they're only as good as
Yeah,
the information you give it. So there is still
right.
quite a
Did
bit of
you are
truth.
you so there was that big data breach. The big data breach just
Yeah.
happened. Is your book in
Well,
that?
it's not. It's honestly not a data breach. It is what they're saying is there is a list of books that are potentially being used. I don't know that anybody's actually have 100% confirmation of this or not. And then there is,
Right.
there is a list of books there. Now, what I found a lot of times is people are checking and they're getting bogus lists where other people are creating these webs, these sites to go check your book, but basically they're just pulling everything off of one of the normal search engines, and
Amazon.
so everybody's name is going to show up and their books are going to show up. the actual one, again, there's only 183,000, which in the world of books is a very small number. I mean, you can go on Amazon or Barnes and Noble at
Yeah.
any day of the week and find over 2 million free books.
Right.
So it is a small number. And, the likelihood that your book is truly on that list. And again, there's nobody that has 100% confirmed that this is an actual list and that is what it's being used for. The reporting is that they've done their due diligence as best they can, but again, they're not getting 100% confirmation. So, and honestly, what I would
Right.
say, you know, if if your book is out there, it's potentially going to be picked up either through something like this or nefariously because it is in the public domain. I mean, this is part about being an
Yeah.
author. You are now a public figure, so the things that you say are
Right.
out there for anybody to basically mine that data and reuse it for whatever purpose they want.
I mean, I'm really interested to see like where creatives go with this, like where how we're going to
Mhm,
handle it. I mean, because it's hard because your work is
mhm,
out there and it on the one hand, by the way, like if I type in write in my style, it absolutely writes in my the style of
sure.
me, But and I used it the other day. I was like, write me a blog post and I literally wrote my own blog post, but I don't want anyone else to be able to do that. That's the issue. Like, how do we make it
Well,
so they can't and we
and I
can,
think
you
this
know?
comes down to integrity. We have things like
Yeah.
this come up, especially for authors and writers, where we talk about plagiarism and copyright infringement and making sure that, citations are given to the originator of the information. And I think this is just going to be one of those things that authors and writers going to have to be extremely diligent about where they're getting the information and whether it is original or not.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be really important
Mhm,
because I mean, especially because years from now, like the one that we talked, my husband and I were talking about was like if you put in all of the friend scripts and you said write the next in this
mhm,
series. Well, don't the writers who wrote all of that deserve the credit because they are the ones who developed the characters, created the world building, did
mhm.
everything, but they technically didn't write then. So I feel like we're going to have to be able to everything changes, right? Like
Well,
everything.
right. And my understanding of it, when you are kind of going into this third party situation where you're saying, well, here's all the Friends episodes, write the next episode that should have happened. Uh, it'll probably be close, but it's not going to be fully fleshed out. It's not going to be accurate. It's not something that you could just print out and take to, a director and a producer and say, okay, go ahead and film the next episode. They're not going to be able to do that. And again,
Right.
part of this is what was, part and parcel with this, the writers and the authors. I mean, the Actors Guild strikes is what's happening so quickly with AI, and so
Right.
they're not allowing the directors or producers to use scripts that are generated by AI. Now they are giving the writers the ability to again use it as a tool as long as they disclose it.
Well, we
Yeah,
have to be able to yeah. I mean, I just dropped something, but the idea of not using it as a tool is
right.
crazy because I know that even like my daughter in school, I'm like, of course you're going to use it. You're going to have to know how to use this. If we don't
Okay.
know how to use this, what are we going to do?
Well, and what
Like
I would say to people
that.
is I want people to just take a deep breath for a moment and think about this. Honestly, this is the next step. We've been using these AI tools for a very long time. We just didn't know that's what they are. Anytime you use your
I
phone and
agree.
it autocorrects, anytime where you're typing an email and it finishes a sentence for you or it suggests a word for you, that's all AI. Same thing with like a lot of these editing programs like Grammarly and ProWriting Aid. Those are all You know,
That's just
yes, they
AI,
are. They are
right?
intelligence assisted based on norms and rules and things that they've seen before. It's all this is just the next level. And again, as long as we remember it is a tool, it is part of the process. The same as, you would never think in a million years, running your manuscript through Grammarly to then just turn around and publish it. Although I have seen that, but it's
Right. You would
not what you
absolutely
should
go through
do,
everything.
because again, it's not the end of, it's not the end of the story. Yes, it's going to get you maybe 10 steps ahead. It's probably going to save you some money with your editor and get the process faster, but it doesn't replace a professional editor. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Totally. So, okay. So
Mhm.
you do editing, but then also you write your own
Yes.
books too. So, how do you like differentiate between the two? And why did you get into editing instead of
Well,
just writing all the time?
Well, okay, so this is kind of a long, complicated story. So I've been writing since I was very
Well,
little.
that's why we're
I've been
here.
writing since I
Yeah.
was very little, and because I never really thought anybody cared about what I wrote, I was, nobody, and little crazy stories in my
Right.
imagination where, I just didn't figure anybody cared about it. So it was more that I did it for me because I couldn't
Yeah.
not write. So I'm also a
Totally get
voracious
that. Yeah.
reader, so I was reading a lot of books for my favorite authors, and they started noticing that. And then every once in a while, I would send them like a note going, "Hey, did you notice on page so and so that there was like an error?" Right? And
Ah!
I'm thinking, this is helpful. Authors want to
No,
know that.
stop.
So then a few of them reached out to me and they're like, "Oh, you're doing really good. Would you consider being a proofreader?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then I guess I found a bunch of mistakes. So then one reached out to me and asked me if I would willingly, be an editor. And I'm like, sure. It's like, I've not really done it. I've read a bunch of books, did a bunch of practice runs and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll do an edit, but I really want to take this,
I
run
can
it
do
by some
this.
people
Yeah.
that I know that are good editors. And so they were pretty impressed. And so that was kind of how I was making my little bit of extra money, was editing books for, authors, And so
Okay.
then I finally decided, my grandkids convinced me I really needed to publish my stories. And so I did. And then at this point now, there's the dilemma. I'm an editor, but and I will be the first to tell you, I cannot edit my own work. I'm too close to it. Even I hire a professional
Oh, okay.
editor to do my work because you are too close to it. You know what you mean to say, you know what you're supposed to be doing here, but we still are human. We make the same mistakes over and over again. I have the same crutch words I've always had. I can see it in everybody else's work. I can't see it in mine. So it's so much easier for me to just send it to one of my fellow editors. I have an amazing editor I love to death. She makes me sound amazing, and she is so gentle and kind with her authors. I just kind of laugh. I'm more of a
Oh,
taskmaster
no.
where she just loves to suggest things.
You're like, yes, my editor's very kind. Sorry, yours is
Well,
not. So,
that's what I say too. Is like, you want to check your editors like you would publishers or agents or illustrators too. You want to get some
right.
sample edits from them to make sure you have the right editor, because not every editor is good for every project or every author. Like I said, some people appreciate the way I do it, where I'm a little more of a taskmaster and I'm a little bit critical about certain things. Other things I'm kind of like, it's probably fine. This is kind of, choice
Right.
between this or that sort of thing. And then others want, just absolute strictness. They want you to just tell them yes or no all the way through. And so you have to kind of search around and find the person that works best for you and for your book. I know people that have gone to multiple editors for multiple books because depending on the genre, depending on the tone, they may want a different editor.
So, okay. So, what are your books about then? Like, what are your stories when you're writing? And do you edit the kind of same kinds of
Well,
things, or what do you do?
yes, I do. I mostly, well, I do all genres except for horror, and I don't do horror because I like to sleep at night.
Okay. No, I can't even like watch horror or read. I can't have anything to do with it. And I have a friend who writes it and it's so good, but I'm like, no,
Yeah,
it's
no,
so
I
scary.
just can't.
Well, have you ever heard like Stephen King says he's like, you don't understand, like normal
Right.
things scare me, like not this super scary stuff. And I was just thinking about
Mhm.
that the other day, and like when I read The Lord of the Rings, like the orcs were super like they were like almost like fairy like
Right.
for me in my mind, even though I know they
Sure.
were disgusting, right? But that's all my brain would let me
Mhm.
think, you know? And so I was like, okay, like the monsters outside of my window were Frankenberry and Booberry and Count Chocula because that's as scary as
Sure.
my life could get, you know? So I
Yeah.
get that. I understand. Have you ever, do you
No,
watch horror
I
movies
don't
then?
have anything to do with horror. In fact, I discourage my family
I'm
from it,
same.
but they
Yeah.
don't listen to me. But, like I said, I do all genres. I specialize with children's books because that's kind of where my first love is. So I write children's books, but I write middle grade chapter books, which are a little bit older. They're for like the upper grades of elementary. So let's say third through sixth grade. So these are the longer stories.
Like Magic
Well,
Tree
Magic
House,
Tree
right?
House is
Like Magic Tree
sort of
House would be
getting
a good one.
into the middle grade. They're more of like what we call a um, early chapter book or kind of a preliminary
Okay.
pre-reader because so they are the longer stories, but chapter books are more
So
like
they're
sort of
before. So like
Harry Potter. Yeah,
Percy
Percy
Jackson.
Jackson,
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
those ones, which it's a bigger, deeper story. So mine usually run around 30 chapters, but I keep the chapters really short. In fact, we try to time them somewhere between 12 to 15-minute reads because we want them to feel progress. And that's sort of why
Do
they're
you
long.
do
There's so many chapters.
yeah.
So,
Do you do author visits? Have you ever
oh,
like
I've
gone to
done
a
lots of
school?
school visits. I love doing school visits. I have puppets made of my characters.
What's the craziest thing? What's the craziest thing that ever happened at a school?
Let's see. Let me think. What was the craziest things? Well, I've had kids ask me, how much money I make, which that's always fun to kind of dodge that question.
Do you
Well,
tell them?
I tell them I make enough money to keep going as an author, and that's about the extent of it. I don't really want to get too much
That's a
into
good
it. It's
answer.
like,
Yeah.
I just tell people I have the greatest job in the world. I get to make things up for a living. No other job is like
That's what I always tell, like when I speak, yeah, I speak at schools too a lot about like what I do. And I always tell them, I'm like, it doesn't matter that you don't know what you want to be when you grow up because my
right.
job didn't even exist, is what I always tell them. And then like even the teachers are like, huh. And then of course the teachers are all like, how did you get into blogging? Because I was a
Right.
school teacher before. And then now I blog. And so they're like, wait, how do I get out of this and start blogging? And I'm like, yeah, that was the ship has sailed. I'm
Right. Well,
sorry.
yeah,
Like,
there was a
yeah.
narrow window for that. I used to be a blogger back before, but so I love these stories, and mostly the series that I'm working on was kind of inspired by my cats and my granddaughter, and basically we came up with this idea that when she was out at night and we couldn't find her, that she was a secret superhero and she was out saving her friends. And so we had to tell the story how she became a
Stop.
superhero.
Okay.
So she goes to superhero school, and that's the series is superhero school. And so we have all these anthropomorphic animals, you know, living their lives and going to
At
superhero
superhero
school,
school.
which is kind of it's a red herring because obviously nobody needs to go to school to be a hero. But it's this cast of
Right.
characters, and they're solving problems big and small in their town and their community. In the second book in the series, the two main characters, their teacher at the school tells them that superheroes fly, and so they need to learn how to fly. So she sends them skydiving, and the two main characters is one is a
Oh
cat and one is a
no.
mouse, and of course the mouse is very courageous and go getting, and the cat's kind of afraid. And so she does not want to jump out of the plane. But as they're circling around trying to convince her, the mouse falls out of the plane. But then the worst part is the parachute doesn't work. And so the cat is forced to face her fear and jump out and save the mouse. But they end up like in this jungle, like far, far away from where they're supposed to
Oh.
be. And they stumble across this enterprise of monkeys who are capturing and imprisoning other animals in the jungle to sell to the zoos. And so they're trying to figure out how to save them and how to shut down the monkeys. In the third book, they go through this crazy portal into the real world, and they
And this is the
yeah,
superhero school
superhero
book
school
series,
series.
right?
Yep, they turn into children. And so,
I was like, I typed it in when you were talking. I was like, I'm finding it. This is
yep,
really cute, actually. The superhero, with the curiosity of a
yep,
cat, with the passion of a pig, with the
yep.
courage of a mouse. This is
Thank
so
you.
cute. Oh my gosh. So who draws?
I
Who does your
have
drawing?
a lovely illustrator. I
Sam.
had one illustrator that did the first two books. Unfortunately, her health would not let her continue. But I have a amazing illustrator who
Okay.
just picked up where she left off and kind of reimagined the characters and brought them a little more to life, as you'll see, and with the passion of a pig. And his name is Ed Bowker out at Samby Books. And I just love the work he does for me. He also helped me do a coloring book. Right now we're working on a new book, which is a spinoff to this series. It's one of the side characters. His name is Ricky Rent, and he is a self-described street rat. And so we're doing this Ricky Rent street rat series.
So, like, what I want to know though is like, so you spend a lot of time in like this
Yes, I do.
anthropomorphic world, and like you
Yes,
live
I
in
do.
this world when you're writing. So, what's it like when you like go to Walmart and
Well,
everybody's human?
that's one of the lovely things about my imagination is I can take a human person and turn them into an animal character in about 30 seconds.
Oh, so like everybody
Pretty
in your
much,
world is an
yes.
animal then. Like you can just like if you meet
Mhm.
like a good character, like you're legitimately going to be the
Yes,
alligator in my
yes,
book
yes.
next
There's
time. Like
generally a
that's
good
happening.
reason why they take on that
Nice.
persona, but sometimes I'll mix it up and I'll take some characteristics from a couple of different people to create a character. But I feel like
Right.
life is
Have you
just this open field of ideas and inspiration for my writing.
So tell me about this though. Have you ever like gotten revenge on somebody by turning them into like a snail in your book or anything like
No,
weird? Like how do you like or do you give them like their favorite animal? Like could
sure,
I
you
be
can
a flamingo?
absolutely be a
Is what I
flamingo, and
really
I
am
just
asking.
I try not to have time for anger and revenge and stuff like that. I'm too busy with all the other things I do.
Have you ever
Have
caught
I caught
yourself though?
myself?
But like have you ever been like like in the moment you're like, "Oh my god, this alligator is so nasty. This is my 3rd grade teacher." Like have you
Well,
ever had a moment?
when it actually more happens in reverse, where I'm trying to think of a villain, and then I'll try to think of
Okay.
all of the people and the things that have been done to me over the years, and then just sort of morph those characteristics and those events into that character. So I don't try to draw directly from any one single person. In fact, it was quite odd that one of my friends read my first two books, and she came to see me a few weeks later, and I said, well, what did you think? And she goes, well, I find it interesting. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. She goes, you're every single one of these characters. And I'm like, oh, I didn't
Oh
expect to
my
be these
god, you're like, "Oh,
characters.
so this is actually you're like, "Oh, so actually I just wrote a story about myself." Maybe. Finally got to say what I wanted to
Yeah,
say in
well,
life.
she
There you
was just
go.
saying they were
So, okay,
different
but like
attributes of me. It's like, Simon is
of
me when
you,
I'm
I love
brave and
it.
in
I love
charge.
it.
Cat is me when I'm scared, and And Patty is when I'm being intelligent and helpful, and Freddie is just kind of me being a mom and grandmother kind of personality. It's just those traits come through, and it's like, even though I pick up traits from other people, it's like I'm writing these stories, I'm creating these characters, so there's always going to be a little bit of me in them anyway,
Yeah.
even the villains. Sure.
And that's okay. And I think the villain part's cool because, like, it's okay to celebrate your
Yeah.
misgivings. Like, it's okay. Yeah, I'm not perfect. I think
Well,
that's
in
cool.
in
Ooh, that's fun.
fact,
Are your
in book
grandkids in the
3, we
books?
have a bully that appears in books 1 and 2 who's having a change of heart. And the problem they run into is they can't
I
convince
love a good
everybody
change of
that
heart
they're
bully.
not just making it up, that they really do want to change. And then, of course, the spin off series in the initial
Oh,
book, Ricky Rent was not really a nice character, but through his interactions with the superhero school group and the other people, he's become a better street rat, so to speak. Sure.
which is important in street rattery. I do agree for sure. Yeah, you got to like
Well,
improve on your
he's
rat
so good
times.
at
That's
it.
pretty good, actually. What I love is that. You know what's funny though is like when we're talking, like you talk about like other
Sure.
people's writing and you were into it. But then you started talking about your writing and suddenly you became like so enamored and like impassioned. And I'm like if you could only do your own writing all day and not focus on other
Well,
anyone else's, would you?
maybe. I don't know. I think for me, variety helps everything. Me helping other authors, either write their book or publish their book or find an agent. All of that
Right.
helps me. Same thing with doing the writing groups. I do two
Mhm.
writing groups a week and one big one a month, and that helps me to
Yeah.
kind of look at things from a different perspective, to get different ideas, and also that accountability and that camaraderie that you need to kind of push yourself over the line, because let's face it, there are good parts to writing a story and then there's the editing.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it too. Like, I don't want you to like, what if you're in the
Hmm.
position where like, oh my god, I'm just editing
Sure.
everybody else's stuff all the time, and you're right. Like, it's so much easier to edit someone else's. It's like I taught kindergarten, and I've taught hundreds of kids to teach to read, but I was never
Sure.
able to teach my own.
Well, yeah,
Like,
yeah, and
right? I
but like
totally
I
get it.
said, that helps me. And then, because I couldn't help as many people as I would love to, I started the podcast, and I just love doing that. Well,
How do
my
you and
podcast, yeah, I
do you
love
feel
my
good about it? Like,
podcast. Like I said, we're just wrapping up season 2. It's called The Writer's Parachute. Basically, I interview authors across the genres. We talk about their books, we talk about their writing journey, we talk about things that they struggled
okay,
with, things that they learned. I offer tips, and we talk about different topics. The entire season 2, we talked about reviews and getting reviews and what to do with the reviews, all of those things. And I just absolutely love it. It's one of the high points of my week to get to record those episodes for my podcast. And I have just, it kind of really exploded my world from where it was already kind of a little bit insane to this, but I absolutely love it. I mean, I, I couldn't have imagined when I was where you are right now that in less than a year I would hit top 3% worldwide.
right. I like I don't even know what I'm doing. So I'm enamored watching all
Right.
of my friends do this. And I was just like, I
Sure.
love talking to people. And I just want to hear about what they
Hmm.
do
Yeah.
and how they do it and stuff. And like right now, the coolest part about you is like, yes, like the thing I know about you, like as like on Facebook, is I know that you write stories and
Hmm.
then I know you help people. But when I listen to you talk about your story,
Yeah.
you love it so much. And I like you can just hear like the
Yep.
nurtury grandma part of you in there, like wanting the kids to read it and learn and be a
Well,
part
and
of it. I love
just to be here on the same page, I was a reading specialist. So to me, it's all about getting those kids
yeah,
to read that story, drawing them in
whatever it
and getting
takes.
them. I have a granddaughter who struggled with dyslexia and reading, and it was such a struggle for her.
Mhm.
And she was just falling further and further behind in her reading ability. uh, for us, the pandemic was a lifeline because I could sit down with her every single night and
Oh,
my other grandchildren. We Zoomed.
yeah.
We Zoomed every single night at bedtime. And they would each,
Oh,
I let them
wow.
pick any book that they want and they just had to read for 15 minutes. And what I found is not only did their reading improve, but it also got them interested in all of the other books that were being read. So they came back night after night because not only they wanted to know what happened in their
Oh,
book, they
for
wanted to know what
sure.
happened in the other books from my other grandchildren that were being read and the one I was reading.
So you just put them all on like a little group. Oh, I love this. It's so cute. And
Yes,
then now your grandkids love reading. I mean, that's why, my husband and I talk about reading is
yes.
such a big deal to both of us and, as an author too. But like, yeah, like getting that love of reading
Well,
is
in
such
the
a big deal for kids. And I once met a librarian who said the coolest thing to me ever. And she said that the
yes,
book is the reward, not the
right.
ice cream for
Well,
finishing the book. And
and
I
here's
love
what
that.
I
So,
know as a reading specialist. You have to cross that bridge from learning to read to the story underneath, because and that's where my granddaughter was struggling, is she was struggling so
yeah.
hard to read the words that they were just random words on a page. She couldn't see the story underneath, and so what we
Yes.
were able to do is get her to a point where she was reading more than struggling through the words, and she could hear the stories from the other
Right.
books, and that made her want to try harder because then it was something more. It wasn't just words on a page, it was something more than that. And that's, I think, the secret that a lot of kids
But I
miss.
think
Yeah, I
that we
think parents miss it.
forget
I think
that.
kids miss it, that they don't
Yes.
realize that it's almost like the best movie in the yeah,
It's
it's the
not
best
just
movie
words
in
on
the
a
world because
page.
you get to imagine what those characters look like. Yeah.
It's your movie.
Mhm.
Well, like I was saying with the orcs, like I loved Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
but had I watched it first, I never would have finished it because the first time I saw that orc,
Right.
that was too much for me emotionally. So I would have just been done with orcs. That would have been it. And so I never would have got to experience that world. And so I think it's really cool when you remind kids, like you said, that like this story exists. Like the story is the best part of this. Like, and I think you're right too. Like you said, it's
Yes,
all about a
again,
good story,
how do you connect? You can't
and
connect if it's not a good story.
what makes a good story? So what do you think makes a good story? Like when you're telling
Mhm.
a writer like this story sucks or this story's great. Like
Okay.
what
Well, first of all,
makes
I
a
would
good
never say
story?
either one of those things because I think it's subjective. But what I would say is most books,
Fair.
even nonfiction books, follow some modified form of a hero's journey, meaning that the character and or characters you meet at
Okay.
the beginning of the book are completely different and are changed somewhere through the story than the ones you meet at the end of the book. That means that they had something that changed. That's always where a book should start or a story should start, is when something changes either 5 seconds before or 5 seconds after something changed. They broke a shoelace that sent them on this adventure. A bomb
Something
exploded down the
changed.
street. Whatever it is that starts that story. And then the rest of the story is them
Either
trying,
5 seconds
yeah, and
before or
the
5
rest of the
seconds
story is
after.
them trying to either learn what they
Okay.
need to learn to fix the problem, find what they need to find to fix the problem, gather whatever people, tools, or whatever it is they need to fix the problem or solve the problem or change whatever it is within themselves. And again, they're going to collect other memorable characters along the way that are going to help them on that journey. So, I mean, that's very simplified, and anybody can look up what a hero's journey is. And again, it doesn't matter if you use all the aspects of it, but you do want to kind of follow that to tell a story, because there's nothing worse than getting to the end of the story going, and what was that about?
This is the same story. I agree. I definitely
Yeah.
think I want my main character to grow up. Not like grow up, I
Yes.
guess, but just grow in a certain way. Like I want them to become who they're supposed to be. I actually think sometimes that's why I get frustrated. Like a great example would be like I'll always forever
Hmm.
going to have this conversation is Twilight. And by the end of the first
Right.
book, nothing had happened, and like I think it's really important when you have a series that books can stand alone. And I think Twilight has its place. I think it did wonderful things for
Hmm.
the industry as a whole. But I think that the books alone can't stand. And I think that is what makes a good story is especially a series. I want to be able to pick up one
Right.
book
So
and have
this was
loved
this,
it.
this is the one book, and it does do better in the second and third book. But in the first book, it was all about the character development, and they forgot about the story. I mean, they made it very vivid
Right.
characters that drew you in and
Yes.
held you in trance. But you get to the end of the story, and you're just like, "But wait, what? That's it?"
But you know what though? They did such a good job with character development that we were
Yes.
absolutely willing to go on to book 2 because
Yes.
we fell in love with the characters, and that's in and that's interesting because if you think about it, the
Yes.
story has been told a million times, but in that instance, it was simply the fact that we loved the characters so very much
Yes,
that made us love
yes.
the story. You're right.
I mean,
Interesting.
there was a few moments towards a plot and a story. I mean, obviously, you had Bella that didn't, her life was
Yeah.
changed, and she didn't really believe. She didn't want to believe, and then she believes, and then she goes into this kind of protector mode, which is almost a 180 change. But honestly, that's not growth. I mean,
Right. It wasn't well, and especially it
sure.
was just something that happened to her
Yeah,
as
it
opposed
wasn't
to
something
something
she
she did to grow to
participated.
become more.
Yes.
I see
Yes.
what you're
It was like
saying.
the events were happening around her and she had no
You want
choice,
and
which
you
I don't
think
find those very intriguing stories.
well, that's another really great example of that is another great, book that everybody talks about, but Mockingjay, how she like always passes
Mhm.
out at like the important moments because I guess like the author didn't want to write that scene. I don't know, but like it's like we're there and then she passes out and then she wakes up and they're like, "Here's what went down," and you're like, "What?" Like, and I love those books. They're some of my favorite books in the world. But that is the
Mhm.
downfall of those stories to me is she always passes out during the biggest and most important
Mhm.
time, and then we just learn about it after. If it was like going to be too much to have to write, I think
I
it's a
I
little
kind of
lazy in a way,
agree
which
with
is
you
probably
there.
awful to say
If you're
about one of
going
my
to go
favorite
there,
writers.
why would you not take your main character to, it's like, I mean, that would be like, inviting your best gal to
Yes,
a party and sending her a party dress, but then you take the neighbor to the party? What? Why?
yes. Exactly. Exactly. And but we literally have been waiting for this moment. They're like, "Oh, I got to tell you what went down after you knocked out." And I'm like, "But I wasn't knocked out. What happened?" Like, hang on. It's even
Yes.
worse too when it's in third person. And you're like, "Wait, what?" No, like we're okay.
Well,
We can totally do
I'm
that part.
I'm a
So,
firm
that's
believer in
funny.
actually
So,
third
okay.
person works really well if you pay attention, because what it does is it allows the
Yes. And
reader to be that third person telling the story.
I love that,
Yes.
especially for middle grade books, especially for that age, because I think that when any kid that can step into
Yes.
the story and be the storyteller is going, their
Yes.
imaginations are so vivid at that moment. And the more that they use
Yes.
them, the less likely they are to lose them. And my thing is like, I'm sure we're all raising the Renaissance right now. I think all of
Yes.
these kids are our next Renaissance. So we need to give them that
Absolutely.
chance,
And
is what
it's
I'm saying. So.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say
Well,
one
okay,
more thing
so
about that, and it's not a popular opinion.
no, I was gonna say, and I also want, yeah, I want to give you a chance to say what you want to
Mm.
say. Yeah, because I feel like
Yeah,
I'm saying
well, it's
everything. So
it's
definitely
just an
say what you want to
unpopular
say.
opinion because I know that most parents they want their kids off of these devices, and I understand why. As a parent and a grandparent, I understand
No.
why. However, it's almost like cutting your nose off to spite your face when they're not allowing them to participate with all of these
Yes.
available digital books that are 10 times cheaper than the print books. I can carry around 10,000 books in my iPad and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
weigh any more than if I have one. And there's so
Yes.
many of them,
Well,
they're
not only
free.
that, but just like the resources, the
Excuse
paper,
me?
the ink. Yes,
Mhm.
and especially like Amazon publishing, you can download like and you can just like pay a fee and basically
Yes,
like
yes, you can do
get books for free all the
the
time,
Kindle
right?
Unlimited where
Isn't there like a kid
you
book?
can get
Yeah.
books for free. You can get up to 10 books at any one time, but after you read one and return it, then you can get another one. So, yeah,
Oh wow. And that's
yeah,
like basically the price of a book,
yeah, and
right? Yeah,
and
less
there's
than
so
the
many
price sometimes.
authors that
I mean,
will
that's the
give
thing is
away their ebooks, especially children's authors, because again of this reason that a lot of adults
yes.
and parents don't want their kids taking advantage of the ebooks because again they want them off the devices. And I understand that, but I think that there are tools and apps out there where you can block everything except for the reading. A lot of times with the Kindle apps, the Nook apps, they can only read.
I
They can't really do anything else. So I
yeah.
don't think it's the big scary video game industry when you're reading an ebook. But we've been
Oh yeah, yeah,
conditioned
yeah.
to think online is online. Where I think in this particular case, I would rather one of my
And I don't think
grandkids
that's
be
true.
reading
I
a
think
book on their phone or their iPad at night than to be sitting there playing some kind of crazy game or video game.
yeah. But like think about I mean I know that video games and things
Hmm.
like that saved my daughter during the pandemic. Like the fact that she was able to communicate with all her friends
Sure,
on Discord and they played games every night. Like they
sure.
still hung out every single day together. Actually, the kids actually took
Hmm.
Discord and created this giant homework like, thing. They did all these things and I'm with you. What I say is like this is a way of life. We have to figure out how to
Hmm.
incorporate it. And I'm not saying don't go touch grass. Go touch some grass, but also
Yeah.
this other stuff, Matt. I
Well,
agree
and I
with you.
think what people
I fully
forget
agree.
is with all
Yes.
the tools that we have,
So
is like you even have the ability to have that book read to your children. So if you're a busy parent and you can't get to reading to them every night, you can
yeah.
actually set it where you will read it to them. Whisper Sync is almost available on all ebooks. Yeah.
And I mean, there's even apps that can
Mhm.
yeah, and you can follow along with your fingers and all that stuff and like that was one of the biggest things when we were teaching guided reading was teaching kids how to read, one word at a time. And now like an app can help them do that. Like a
Mhm.
teacher doesn't have to sit there and point with them. An app can be like ding
Well,
if you
even
did it
even
right,
the
and
Kindle
that's so
app.
neat. I mean,
Yeah,
there's so
even the
much that can
Kindle
be
app. So
done.
if
It's
they're
so
reading a
cool.
book on the Kindle app and they get to a
Mhm.
word that they don't understand or they can't
Yeah.
pronounce, they can literally put their finger on that word and the dictionary will come up and tell them what the word is, but it also will come up with a little speaker where it will say the word for them.
That's so cool. Like, can you imagine having that kind of feedback in your life? I'm, I,
Yes.
how much faster are they learning to read with this? Because it's got to be faster than the
Yes.
one-on-one
Yes.
15-minute time you get with your teacher, once a day. Because
No.
and I'm not blaming the teachers. The teachers have done a great job with what they have been offered. I want to be very clear, but you do not have the time to teach
Right, and
individuals
with
to
so
read in the
many
same way a
other new
computer would.
technology coming down the road, it's like the basics of reading and math and stuff like that. They're getting less and less time and attention from the teachers because of all of these other things that they really do need to teach that are critical for our world today. I mean, I can't even
Right.
imagine what it would have been like trying to also incorporate computers and programming and all of those things into a classroom curriculum that they have to do nowadays. It would be mind-boggling. It's like, okay, that time's got to come from somewhere. There's only so many teaching hours in a day. So where do you trim that time from? It's got to come from
I know,
something
and I
else.
also want the kids to go touch grass. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
we could have this discussion like for the next 12 podcasts about how I feel about the education system. But and I think a lot of authors really feel that
Yes.
way because a lot of us love
Yes.
school. Like we did this because we love school. We're still in schools to this day. Like this
Mhm.
is a part of our life. Schools learning is a big deal, and it's really hard to watch learning. It's really hard to watch kids not love learning just based
Right.
on the
Well,
fact
and
that
I
the
think
school is being crappy,
that's sad for
I
everybody
get that.
involved. It certainly doesn't help the teachers. It certainly doesn't help the parents, and it most definitely does not help
No.
the students. So, it's like my mother always used to tell me, she goes, there's two ways to look at a problem: whine about it or solve it.
Yes. And I think you're right. And I what the worst part is that the ebooks would solve such a huge
Hmm.
problem, which is the access to books for kids. And like if we just were able to just put ebooks in front of every kid,
Hmm.
especially with those, and we've done such a good job in schools, but like
Right.
if we could take that stigma away, like you said, from the
Mhm.
Kindle Fires and the e-readers and everything like that, then the parents would understand this is as valuable as a paper book, if not a 10,000
Exactly,
times
and
more
it's
because it's
really
10,000
hard for
paper
them to
books.
lose
Yeah,
because,
I love
it's
that.
not likely they're going to lose their tablet or their phone or their, the laptop or the computer system. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and you
there,
can
and
find it
even
when you
even if they
do.
do lose it, then you can re-download it because it
Yeah.
is, you do own it. And as I said, nowadays most paperbacks are running somewhere
Yeah.
around, 12 to $17 a copy. That's a lot of money. If you think about how many books, yeah,
And
for a
that's
paperback book,
insane
it
for a
starts
book.
getting expensive
Yeah.
where you can get a lot of paperback books for under, $3 to $4. A lot of them are under $2. That's a huge savings.
And that's cool. Like because especially like and it like when you think about teachers and I wonder how they're handling it though like
Right.
e-libraries with book bans. Like in a classroom if
Right.
I
Yeah.
have my
I don't
Kindle,
know
what
about that.
happens? I don't
I
know.
don't know that they're allowing a lot of the devices in the schools for that sort of thing. So if they're using a device in the school, it's usually a school provided device, and then of course they have the ability to
Uh, right.
say or block whatever they want. Um, I don't want to talk about the book banning because then I get really up on my soapbox and
Oh, I know. I'm like we're at the end of the podcast right now, right? Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
did it.
Yeah. Ooh, you're right, right, right. Ooh, yeah. I mean, I know. I'm like, we could just say that. We could just be like, we're not going to talk
Sure.
about book banning. So, next time we will, though. Man, all I know is
Mhm.
kids deserve access to books because that's the only way that like you can
Well,
learn anything
and
for real is what I'm
that's
saying. Like,
a book is a
but
teacher in itself.
yes, and books sometimes have uncomfortable situations in them, but that's much
Well,
better
and
than
that
the
is one
actual
of the
uncomfortable
things that I do
situation,
tell all
you
of my
know?
authors and all of my writers. Your job as an author is to bring forth the uncomfortable topics and questions and leave it with the reader to start a conversation. You're not solving the problem. You're not giving them an
Ooh.
answer. You're just saying, here's the problem. What are you going to say about it?
Ooh. That's it. That's the end of the podcast right there. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the problem. What are you going to say about it? I love this. Oh my gosh. Thank you for,
Thanks
I
for
don't even
being
know how
on.
to
And
end a
it's like,
podcast. Like, thanks for being
yeah,
on.
do you have a
Welcome
tagline?
to Hi. It's, you know, I mean, in my life, I have a tagline, which is have a nice day and watch out for the big yellow chicken. So I feel like maybe that could be my tagline, but it seems like a weird tagline for this. Have a
There
nice
you
day and watch out for the
go. And
big
it's
yellow
like,
chicken. There we go.
maybe leave some what do
Oh
they
my
call
gosh,
them?
we
Like they're
did it.
not
We did it.
they're not paws, they're what are they? They're claws or chicken feed. Yeah, so leave your
Oh,
talon
talons.
prints in
Talons. Yeah,
the
talons.
follow or something. You'll work on it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, put your talons in the. Oh, right, because you have to tell them to like. When Hallie was little, she did like smash
That's
that
right.
like button
So
and don't forget to
I can
subscribe.
tell you
It was so
what
cute. Like
mine
I was like,
is, and you
where did
can
that
fill
even
it
come
in. So
from?
I always say,
They all say,
don't forget to smash that like button, hit the like button, don't forget the bell for every new episode that we have. We're back here every weekday, whatever you're going to put there. And then don't
yeah, every
forget to follow
whatever
me
I'm
on
doing.
social media.
I
I'm
don't know
on
yet. I think
Facebook,
we're gonna try
Instagram,
to do
Twitter,
videos.
TikTok, and now Threads at yeah, there you go.
Oh, Jamie
There you
Gnomes. There it is. Okay. I
go. That's
like
it.
it. Oh, that's my
And
end.
we'll
There
see you
it
next
is. So
time.
it's like, yeah, okay, what would I say there? Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, don't and have a nice sandwich out for the big yellow chicken. Okay, there it is. We're done. I can stop the button, right?